Well, the reality was once we decided to pull the permits, and once we went to pull the permits and turned in our permit applications, we were told by the building inspector that because it was an ag building that was going to be converted into living quarters, that we would have to engage an engineer who would help us with the design as well as all the code requirements for the building code to be able to convert it into the space. Again, thinking that would be rather easy to do. One thing I should remind you of too, and one thing that I should not remind you but tell you, is that when we bought this building, there was no water, so there was no well, and there was no septic. So the first things we had to do before we could even start any kind of construction was to get septic put in, and that threw me for a loop because of what was involved there. To get septic, you would have to find a septic designer who then would design your septic system, decide where you would put the mound and the drain field and the tanks, and then how you would get all of that piping into the building. Then, of course, if you have septic, you've got to get water. So now you'd have to find a well driller who would drill a well, and you'd have to figure an appropriate place for them to drill it. And we did. So we moved up here on August 16th of 2020. And by the end of September, we had the septic already in, and about 2 weeks after that we had our well. So our septic, the company that did our septic was nice enough to put a dump station and a dump pipe in the building so we could dump all of our septic waste and all of our waste into the septic tank. We wouldn't have to hook up the trailer or hook up the camper and take it down into town and take it to the dump tax. We could just go ahead and hook up to that to the dump station and dump everything we had. We had water, so now we could actually hook up our camper and hook up our camper to water, so we'd have water in the camper for showers, washing dishes, cooking, etc. So those were the things that we were required to do as we pulled the permits. We got the septic, we got the water, we could operate out of here in the camper. And then we waited. The inspector told us, the building inspector told us that we had to employ an engineer to help us with the design. We had some preliminary drawings that for design that we had done. One of the things that we learned by way of the internet is that post-frame buildings, or at least, and I made one big mistake on that as I think about it now. Most, at least from what we learned, is that post-frame buildings, or as we call them, pole barns, different manufacturers have different specs and use different lumber dimensions for their buildings. A lot of what you see on the internet about post-frame buildings is that they use 6x6 laminated posts for all of your posts that are going to be used for the building. And crazily enough, I made that assumption that that's what we had. And to expound on that later, as we get a little bit deeper into this video about what we faced, we found that there were some problems with that. But anyway, so we employed an engineer, multiple trips to the engineer, Stacy working with the drafts person. We gave them the specs of the building. We had the preliminary drawing that was supplied to us by Sherman Pole Buildings, telling us that it was a 66 long by 40 foot wide building. There were 5 windows in the space, and she sat down, and we sat down with the engineer and the the draftsperson, and we had them draw out the building at within the building too, putting all of the different code requirements that we had to meet to convert this building into into living quarters. 8 weeks later, we finally got the drawings. And once we got the drawings and submitted that, we got our permit issued, and we could start construction.